everybody? I'm so pumped to have you guys on Ignite today. Thank you to our 3 listeners for joining in. This is going to be fun. Speaking of 3, we're going to have a 3-person panel today. And we're going to be talking a lot about not only addiction marketing, but converting leads into patients through improved admissions. And it's really cool. And guys, if you're not in addiction, I promise the whole conversation will be applicable to all healthcare services verticals. We're going to learn a lot. It's not just driving more leads. It's about converting more leads into patients so we can connect them with care. Jeremiah and Samantha, welcome to Ignite. Samantha, tell them, where do you hail from? What do you do? Where do you do it?
Okay. Well, I hail from originally Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Came down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida 21 years ago. And I've been in the addiction treatment space for about 18 years now. I am in long-term recovery as well. And I am doing what I love here. So right now, I have recently joined Growth Sherpa Consulting Firm as the Senior Director of Admissions. And what that means, it's not particularly like a role at a treatment facility. So what it is so with my consulting, I build call centers. I optimize call centers. I boost revenue. I train admissions teams on quality and compliance. And I also, like everyone has the sticking point of how to get the admits in and then also do it with closing with compassion. So that's always the best way, and the numbers show for themselves. And it's absolutely what I love.
Yeah. That's cool. And that's something I love about the addiction space, is that there's so many people that are mission driven because they have lived it and are living it, and they're trying to help more people that were going through the same thing. I think that's the coolest part about this space. Thank you. And I can't wait to dive into how you do get more leads to convert into care with compassion, because whether it's addiction or any other healthcare vertical, we get blamed for not a lot of leads quite often. Not that often. And it's not just us. Universal problem. Agency not sending enough leads, and it's actually not the agency or the marketing director's fault. It is call centers not converting, not enough appointments, yada, yada, yada. I can't wait to dive in. Jeremiah, what's up in Wisconsin? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I used to be you, Alex. I ran a marketing agency for time.
Yeah,
and did marketing for healthcare companies, but got kind of specialized into the behavioral healthcare space. And over time, just saw how challenging care navigation was and how many problems there were with people finding the right care, how hard admissions was. And so co-founded recovery.com, which is a platform people can use to find the right treatment for them. Chief product officer here, and just, love working with Growth Sherpa, love helping marketers think about how can they better serve patients. And, one of the things that I talk about a lot is basically everyone who breaks their arm goes to the doctor, goes to the hospital and gets treatment. Whereas in our space, all of the surveys show that upwards of 80 to 90% of people who need care don't get it. And so it's not so much like, how can I grab more from my competitor, but, how can we help people break down those barriers to care, stigma? There's a lot of different issues, right? But just help people get the care that they need.
So then with that, I bet you believe in educational, full funnel content marketing, advertising.
Sounds good.
I walked you right into it. But is that a big form, right? We're not trying to take from competitors, and it's not like Verizon trying to take from Sprint. There's only so many cell phone users. This is a lot of us don't know. We can find care, what care. And so is that a big part of the addiction treatment marketing funnel, is to make sure we're educating and advising like, hey, you can get treatment in these ways?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things is if you break your arm, you probably know it's broken or something's wrong. Right? A lot of people don't even know. We've normalized a lot of substance use disorder so that, waking up with a hangover every morning and you don't think that you even have a problem, right? Denial is part of it. So there's so much education that has to happen. And then with care, I think a lot of times people have this sort of movie 28 days, go check yourself into some. And while that is a point on the continuum, right? There's virtual care, there's apps, there's outpatient programs, there's so many different types of care, and educating people. A lot of people are like, I can go to rehab for a month. And it's like, well, you could do this 3 times a week, at the place, or you could do, and they just don't even know what's available. And so, education is definitely a major part of what we do. And I think what providers need to do to be able to serve their community.
I love it. Samantha, is that a big issue that call centers deal with, is people are calling in and they have no idea the right questions asked and the types of care, and maybe they're even calling the wrong place that doesn't, like, where do you start with making sure call center and admissions is educating treating in the correct, what are the biggest gaps you see? Is it that, or is it something else that?
I mean, it all ties together. I mean, there are many pieces that tie together that do a good, not so much pitch, but to connect with the client and build rapport. So basically, because they're all different outlets now, it's not just the business development. Now it's the digital marketing, it's the, social media. So my thing is, information is power. Back in the day when, they used to qualify clients and then just, push them through because of insurance, now it's not like that today. Now it's about building rapport. Some people know what they're walking into. Some people say, hey, I know I want to go to treatment. I know what it's about. And then I have families calling in, have no idea, and their child is suffering from drug or alcohol addiction or mental health, and they don't know where to start. So again, information is power. Starting with the call center representative, like they talk about, like they say, hey, what's going on? And then also, as you're building the rapport, you're able to find out, what exactly they're struggling with, and you're able to give information on the facility, whether it's trauma informed, whether they do CBT, DBT, EMDR, you can walk someone through that entire process. It's not just the intervention or the 28 days that people see on TV or the movies. It's more about like getting in there and saying, hey, listen, your loved one needs help or you need help. Let's try to give you as much information as possible to make an informed decision.
I love it. There's a lot there. Man, you'd have to be highly trained, skilled. Do you find that the call center colleagues are also in recovery? Like, do they know the space well and they also believe in it, or it's less so and they need a lot more training? That's just curiosity.
I would honestly say it's probably half and half, or 75-25.
Okay.
Most people that are in recovery, like when I started in admissions, a number of years ago, having multiple years clean, I knew kind of how to connect, but there's a different way to go about building rapport with clients and being able to say, hey, listen, you need help, and here's what you're going to do to start believing in it and believing in yourself. So it's like with that training, some people are natural. Some people need the training. Some people come in as never having an admissions job, but also have gone back to behavioral health tech, So it's just having that appropriate training with the policies and procedures in the training manual is of the utmost importance.
Yeah, I love it. So structure, process, and then passion. Yes, Jeremiah.
One of the things too that's really challenging is a lot of providers have diversified their programs. And so you might have one center that has a depression PHP program and a detox center and an adolescent IOP, and they got 14 different programs, eating disorders. If you have a centralized call center and people are calling for one of those 14 programs, the person, to Samantha's point, picking up the phone may have personal experience, may understand the patient journey for one or two of those things, but a lot of times they have no idea how somebody with substance use disorder in recovery and background in that might have no idea how to talk to somebody whose daughter is struggling with an eating disorder, right? And so understanding the personalization and that everybody's journey and story is different. And I think even between levels of care, right? I was just talking to a provider that's a methadone clinic, and they're like, yeah, when people call us looking for residential treatment, we don't know what to tell. And they know what they do really well. Yeah. But some of the people calling just Googled rehab near me, call it, and they're like, I don't know, right? And so it's very hard. The amount of training I think that is done and Growth Sherpa is working to change this. They're amazing, but is kind of borderline criminal in my opinion at a lot of centers.
I love the insight. It's something a lot of us wouldn't have any clue into, and that's probably part of the passion in building recovery.com is the amount of education and care. Like, it's just Googling stuff doesn't really help inform you. You got to click on 10 different links. ChatGPT will eventually tell you some basic that it's just cobbling from Google. So I see where you're going with it. Let's stay on the admissions track, and then we're going to back up into best way to get leads, because that's what our 5 listeners like learning about. All right. So it sounds like not every time is it a one call close, if you will, because Samantha, you talk about closing with compassion, right? So I'm assuming it's your nurture in some instances and stuff like that. Jeremiah, you had mentioned that your passion is making sure that everything is tracked. What are the best instances you've seen, the best group that are succeeding the most and closing the most, helping the most patients connect with care? What are they doing from a technology stack and integration and stuff like that?
I think there's been sort of this yo-yo. A lot of people had Google Analytics, they had call tracking metrics, whatever, call systems, integrations into CRM. These are the people that are kind kind of doing it more at scale, right? There's a lot of mom and pop places that have a notebook that, there's no tracking, right? And then, with pixels and with cookies and everything like that, there was a fair amount of tracking that was able to be done with remarketing and things like that.
Yeah.
Some of that data has been lost through either policy changes or government, policy changes or technical changes, right? With loss of cookies and things like that. So I think that, what's really important for people to do now is tracking that first party data at the initial point of contact. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see providers making is only having a phone number. Like that's the only way that you can get a hold of me. And they don't have an online verification of insurance. They don't have chat. They don't have text us, right? And so a lot of these kind of lower barrier to entry ways of connecting with the center, if you don't have those, people aren't ready to make the call and they're kind of hidden from you, right? You don't know that they exist until they call, which is a problem if you're trying to do attribution, if you're trying to figure out how to spend your resources. So you've got to be able to collect that first party data. Oftentimes there's many people involved in the purchasing process, right? So mom calls, dad calls, kid calls. And so in CRM, like data hygiene is just a big problem of making sure that all of these different touch points are connected together to a single case. And then, I think the best people are tracking this all the way through to admissions into their EHR, connecting it with their revenue, right? So understanding, what's the lifetime value of this customer, obviously different reimbursement rates with different insurances, different levels of care. If you are running a program like I was talking about before with a 30-day residential and a, family aftercare program, you want to help all of those people, but you don't want to spend the same amount of money on a lead for somebody doing family aftercare as somebody doing. And so a lot of times the evolution that people are going through is instead of just CPL, right? It's like, oh, a call costs us $100. Really understanding all the way through that customer journey. What is your ROI on, however you're investing your marketing dollars, your business development dollars. But frankly, I think probably less than 5% of providers have that full data story. And a lot of people are really struggling because it's gotten much more challenging from a technical standpoint to knit all that together.
And that's why they got to call Samantha, Growth Sherpa, I assume. And Samantha, anything to layer on top of that? Favorite technologies you've seen or way to get that 5% to 20 to 30%, like any keys there to track more campaigns all the way through? I know you're passionate about that, tracking all the way back.
I am. And I've done some specific training with the SaaS platforms, specifically Dazo's, Salesforce, call tracking metrics. I've done trainings with the senior trainers there. And, for me, it's so important to capture the data. Also, now that when you bring the digital marketing piece in, you want to know how much you're spending, what your CPL is, what your CPA is, if your reps are doing a good job. So everything is tracked. I've worked with many different centers that haven't tracked their calls, that don't track their data, and then, basically burning money and setting it on fire. The best part of tracking the data is just to see where everything has come from, and where it's going and, what works and what doesn't work. But the CRMs are huge. Anyone that is starting a call center or even not starting a call center, just with an admissions department, you want to at least have the call tracking software and also the CRM as well.
And the call tracking software and lead tracking in general, because it needs to be able to monitor lead forms that are coming in, I assume, needs to track back keyword, campaign, and not everything is last touch anymore, but I generally get it. And then I think Jeremiah was saying track all the way to lifetime value so that you know which campaigns like this keyword is driving or these campaigns are driving very short-term stays, not worthwhile and stuff like that. So I'm with you. Dazo, Salesforce, got it. Let's go into the marketing sphere of driving more leads into the call centers. So what trends are you guys seeing? Samantha, we'll start with you. What are you seeing being really effective? Because I know somewhat of the outside looking in, like addiction marketing got really tough. Everybody was doing PPC, clicks are $150. And then you just see everybody dropping out. Legit Script made things more honest and independent as well. And it's gotten more difficult. Samantha, what works?
Honestly, there are many different things because back in the day, it was the Google ads. Everybody did the PPC, no Legit Script. Everybody was kind of going rogue with that.
Yeah.
And then it got a little, then they tightened up with the legit script and some of the other, some of the other laws. So, today there are a lot of different techniques. The SEO, search engine optimization, is huge. Keywords and organic. And, I'm finding that there's a new wave of Facebook meta marketing, meta advertising for different pages for different sites. And that's all HIPAA compliant. And, just the PPC is still there, but the digital marketing piece, the SEO is huge. Alumni and family engagement. And there's also a huge trend in the virtual intensive outpatient, now that they're scaling around the country for that, the nationwide.
Yeah, we've got a client around that, and that's interesting and very helpful to people. Talk to me more about the focus on alumni. So it's like, don't just try to get net new all of the time. Focus on the alumni because they're going to be the quickest one to tell their friends and family member. Is that what? Just sending out email newsletters? Like what do you do for alumni that really work that you've seen work?
I've developed alumni programs, and alumni programs and alumni are actually 30% of the readmit rate for treatment facilities. So think about it like the money that you have spent already on the campaigns or digital marketing or SEO or anything that you've done, for a campaign wise, the client, that's already paid for. So it's basically like the client doesn't admit or the client eventually admits.
Yeah.
And then you keep in contact through the EHR, through Keepu, through whatever EMR you're using. You're able to develop alumni program. You're able to do the email marketing. You're able to do the tracking through text messages and clean time and meetings. And, you stay in contact. They have the CRMs have automated emails going out to check in with the client. And they're also the admissions teams that are trained, even admissions to alumni departments, in order to connect with people that are still struggling.
Yeah.
So that is a huge piece to capture because again, money already spent.
Might as well spend a little more time and reactivate and educate. And I know you believe in educating too, to make sure people understand the link between mental health and addiction. Jeremiah, we talked a little bit about different forms of advertising. Samantha says PPC still works, Meta works, SEO works. It's like TikTok works. Everything can work, but I know you believe heavily in the messaging matters too, and talking in simple terms matters. Tell us a little bit more about what that is and what it means to you.
Yeah, so behavioral healthcare companies, care is delivered by clinicians, and a lot of times we let those people get too close to our website. Now the funny thing is, like, you'll send a clinician or the clinical director or whatever, hey, we need an explanation of the DBT therapy, how that works, and they'll send you this sort of gobbledygook thing that it looks like they were writing a term paper for their master's program or something.
That is written by ChatGPT.
Is that if you actually walk over to that person's office and you're like, Jill, what is DBT? She'll actually give you a really normal sounding person explanation. But for some reason, when people sit down to write the copy on their website or whatever, they end up, coming up with this jargony, and we all, the curse of knowledge, right? We know all the things that we know. And so, we know what DBT is. We know what CBT is. We know what EMDR is. We know what PHP is. We know what IOP is. We know what co-occurring disorders are. But, the people that we're talking to have no clue. Right? And
it's a scared mom. For her kid. She's scared, or someone is, not in their right state of mind. So they have no idea.
And I think a lot of the language is just on its face confusing. Like, wait, what's the difference between inpatient and residential? Or, intensive outpatient sounds really scary. Why, what's intensive about it? And it's like, well, it's just the language is kind of on its face confusing. Obviously, everyone gets confused by insurance stuff and PPOs and HMOs. And so I think one of the things that we do a lot is user research, where we're actually just watching videos of random people on the internet, trying to find treatment. And, we're asking them these questions of, what don't you understand? And it's so eye-opening to see I remember looking at a site where they had the length of stay listed, and somebody was like, oh, that's the wait time to get into the program. And you're like, right? So any little thing can trip people up. And so it's just really important. I think a great test is grab one of your kids' high school classmates or something and be like, hey, if you were looking for treatment for one of your friends and you came to our website, like what here would make sense to you? What doesn't make sense? What's missing, right? Go talk to real people, not who are actually in crisis, right? And look at your marketing with that through that lens of, okay, wait, if I didn't know anything, there's a lot too where we kind of, that thing where you put the pea under the cup, right? Like we're hiding the real thing. And people say, oh, we have, this rigorous program that's highly scheduled that, and it's like, well, just show it to me. Like, what does a schedule look like? What does a day look like, right? Or make a TikTok, right? Where it's, 1 minute long that walks me through what does a day look like? But just show people what actually happens in treatment, because most people are just going off of what they saw, Sandra Bullock in a movie or something, and just don't really have any idea what treatment even means or looks like.
I like that simple term, simple message, dumb it down because people, and Jeremiah, my favorite part of that is focus groups and user journey tours and evaluating how people are finding care. That applies to every healthcare vertical out there. I like that a lot. Go ask your friends, tell them to navigate. Does this place make sense, or are we using too many clinical terms? Everybody knows general cleaning for a dentist is, but outside of dentistry, I think we can get too complicated sometimes. Samantha, I'm curious from your perspective, when you dive in and you check out call center and the way people are converting, what is the number one screw up you see happening? What is the biggest red flag that you see often?
Lack of follow-up.
Really?
Yes.
So what is the average time from initial contact to close in the addiction space?
I would say roughly, I would say 2 to 3 days. I would say, the one call close is like something of an enigma. That doesn't really happen much. But, the initial contact is between 1 and 3 days. And that is, consistent follow-up. People are left and they're gone, and, it's they go to other centers because of the lack of follow-up.
And what do you suggest? Like in the morning, hey, they called at night, call in the morning, call twice the next day. What's fair and not annoying? When
you understand who's calling in, whether it's the family member or it's the individual, whether they're in crisis or not in crisis, they could have stopped drinking at that moment and called in, and then they're uninterested in the next hour or the next 5 minutes. So it's like you constantly have to follow up and check in and, say, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? And just keep it on the forefront of their mind, because if they're not ready at that moment, they will be ready again. So like I said, between that 1 and 3 days for the short-term pendings, as they call it, that's the time to strike with the iron while the iron's hot.
I love it. That's smart. Lack of follow-up, guys. It's not just get more leads, it's do more with what you're getting. There's some sketchy players in the addiction space. How do these families tell the good ones from the not so good ones? The Truth Script helped root out some BS, but we're not all the way there, I would think. Jeremiah, what helps not pass the sniff test, or does pass the sniff test? What do you look at when you're trying to determine if this is a money grab or if these people are actually helping people rehabilitate?
Well, I think, one of the reasons why there has been some bad behavior is because people are in crisis. I remember my dad telling me, right, like you're going to buy a car, you have to be willing to walk out, right? Like, yes, there is urgency. Families should have urgency and right. But the one call close, you don't need that, right? You don't need to be pressured into making a decision in the next 3 minutes, right? So I think, part of it is just taking a little bit of time. It could happen over a 24-hour period or whatever, right? But don't do something irrationally because some high-pressured salesperson. And I think that if you feel like you're getting sold, that's probably a warning sign. I think that looking at accreditation is a good, first step. I think that Joint Commission, CARF, those kinds of things are nice to have. If somebody doesn't have that, it definitely is something that I would investigate a lot more thoroughly. Obviously, reviews, I think everyone's doing that, but reading reviews critically is super helpful, and kind of understanding what is the reputation of that center. And then I think it's asking questions, right? You want to make sure that they can answer the questions that you have thoroughly, not evasively, that costs are clear, right? If they're like, this happens a lot. Hey, just get on an airplane, come out, we'll figure out the insurance later, right? It's like, no. If you can't tell me what my copay is, what my deductible, right? Give me a clear picture of cost, those kinds of things. I would say, run away. But I think too that there is really, going back to education, understanding fit. Because there's places that are just like super